Marcus Chen stared at the metal form in his hands. The paper was covered in alien symbols that hurt his eyes to look at. He had filled it out 3 weeks ago at the job center on Earth. Now he was standing on Luna Base, surrounded by creatures. He had only seen in movies. The mistake had started small. Marcus worked construction in New York City. He operated heavy machines like cranes and bulldozers. When he applied for off-world work, the computer system got confused. It saw his crane operator license and somehow decided he was a military combat expert. By the time anyone noticed the error, Marcus was already on a transport ship heading to the moon. The Luna Base recruitment center was huge. The ceiling stretched up so high that Marcus could not see the top. Strange beings walked around everywhere. Some looked like tall blue people with too many arms. Others were made of what looked like living crystal. Few had fur and walked on 4 legs. Marcus felt very small. He walked up to the reception desk. Behind it sat a creature that looked like a mix between a praying mantis and a tree. It had 6 arms and green skin that seemed to glow. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through leaves. Human designation Marcus Chen, it said, reading from a screen. You are here for military recruitment trials. This is highly unusual. Marcus shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Yeah, about that. I think there was a mistake. I'm not a soldier. Just run construction equipment. The creature's large black eyes focused on him. The computer system shows you have combat machinery experience. It says you are qualified for strength trials. Well, I do operate heavy machinery, but it's for building things, not fighting. More aliens had gathered around the desk. They were all much taller than Marcus. Some pointed at him and made noises that might have been laughter. One of them, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms, leaned down to look at him closer. This small creature thinks it can join the Galactic Coalition forces, it said in perfect English. Look at its size. It barely reaches my waist. Marcus felt his face get hot. He had dealt with bullies before on construction sites. Size isn't everything, he said. I might be small, but I work hard. A new voice cut through the chatter. What seems to be the problem here? Everyone turned to look. A tall figure approached them. It walked on 2 legs like Marcus, but that was where the similarities ended. Its skin was silver and seemed to shine. Under the lights, it had no hair, and its eyes were solid black. When it moved, Marcus could hear a faint humming sound. Commander Zixnine, the tree-like creature, said quickly. This human claims there was an error in its application. It says it is not qualified for military trials. Commander Zixnine looked down at Marcus. Its expression was hard to read, since its face did not move like a human face would. Human Marcus. Chen, it said. The computer system rarely makes mistakes. If it says you are qualified, then you must have some relevant experience. Marcus tried to explain again. I operate construction equipment. Cranes, bulldozers, excavators. I can lift heavy things and move them around. But I've never been in a fight or used weapons. The commander was quiet for a moment. Then it made a sound that might have been a sigh. The trials begin in 1 hour, it said. You are already here. The transport back to Earth does not leave for 3 days. You may attempt the preliminary trials if you wish. Or you may wait here until the transport arrives. Marcus looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked amused. Others looked like they felt sorry for him. A few seemed angry that he was wasting their time. He thought about his life back on Earth. Every day was the same. Wake up, go to work, operate machines, go home, sleep. He had been doing it for 2 years since finishing high school. His friends were all getting married or going to college. He felt stuck. What exactly are these trials? He asked. The blue creature with 4 arms laughed. The human wants to know about the trials. This should be entertaining. Commander Zixnine held up one silver hand for silence. The Galactic Coalition uses a series of tests to identify the strongest and most capable warriors from across known space. The trials test physical strength, mental toughness, and fighting spirit. Only the best are accepted into the Coalition forces. And what happens if I fail? You return to your homeworld? No harm will come to you during the trials, testing. Equipment is designed to stop before causing permanent damage. Marcus thought about it. He could sit in the waiting area for 3 days, feeling embarrassed and out of place. Or he could try something completely new. Even if he failed, at least he would have tried. Okay, he said, I'll do it. The aliens around him made various noises. Some sounded surprised. Others sounded like they were placing bets on how quickly he would fail. Commander Zix9 nodded. Very well, report to Testing Bay 7 in 55 minutes. You will be provided with standard testing gear. As Marcus walked away from the desk, he could hear the aliens talking behind him. Most of them seemed to think this would be funny. To watch, a few sounded concerned that he might get hurt. Marcus did not care what they thought. He had made his choice. In less than an hour, he would find out what he was really made of. Marcus followed the signs to Testing Bay 7. The hallways were wide enough for 3 humans to walk side by side. But he still felt cramped when larger aliens passed by. Some of them had to duck their heads to avoid hitting the ceiling. Testing. Bay 7 was enormous. The room was shaped like a circle, and the walls curved up high above his head. In the center of the room stood something that made Marcus stop and stare. It looked like a machine, but also like a piece of art. The main body was made of smooth black metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed blue and green. Along its surface, the machine was about the size of a small building. Cables and tubes connected it to the walls and ceiling. When Marcus listened carefully, he could hear it humming very quietly. That is the apex resonator, said a voice behind him. Marcus turned around. A tall alien approached him. This one looked more like a human than the others he had seen. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face with eyes and a mouth. But its skin was pale blue, and its hair was white like snow. It moved with smooth, careful steps. I am Dr. Velith, the alien said. I will explain how the machine works before you begin your trial. Marcus nodded. It's pretty impressive. How old is it? The apex resonator has been used for over 3,000 years, Dr. Velith said with pride in her voice. It was built by the ancestor race, beings who were far more advanced than any of us. We do not fully understand how it works, but we know what it does. They walked closer to the machine. Up close, Marcus could see that the symbols on its surface were moving slowly, like water flowing uphill. The machine does not just test physical strength, Dr. Velith explained. Many creatures in the galaxy are strong. The Krathri can lift 10 times their body weight. The stone giants of Vex Prime can crush metal with their bare hands. But strength alone does not make a great warrior. Marcus touched one of the cables connected to the machine, felt warm and seemed to vibrate. Slightly. So what else does it test? He asked. Mind, body, and spirit must work together, Dr. Velith said. The machine creates challenges that are different for each person who uses it. It reads your thoughts, your fears, your physical abilities. Then, it creates tests that push you to your absolute limit. She pointed to a large screen on the wall. Numbers and symbols moved across it constantly. That display shows the score, she said. The highest score ever recorded was 847 points. It was achieved by Grath the Destroyer, a Krathari berserker warrior. His strength was legendary across 12 star systems. Marcus looked at the display. Right now it showed all zeros. What's a normal score? He asked. Most beings who attempt. The trial score between 200 and 400 points, Dr. Velith said. A score above 600 is considered exceptional. Above 700 is rare. Only 5 beings in recorded history have scored above 800. Other aliens had started to enter the testing bay. Marcus recognized some of them from the reception area. They stood around the edges of the room, talking quietly among themselves. Some had brought recording devices. It appears you have attracted an audience, Dr. Velith said. Word has spread about the human who thinks he can pass the trials. Marcus felt nervous. He was used to working alone or with a small crew. Having dozens of aliens watching him was uncomfortable. Do they always watch? He asked. Sometimes, Dr. Velith said. Usually when someone unusual attempts the trial, you are the first human anyone here has seen. Most find your species, curious. Commander Zixneen entered the room. The silver-skinned alien walked over to where Marcus and Dr. Veleth were standing. Are you ready to begin, human Marcus Chen? The commander asked. Marcus looked at the machine. Again, it seemed even bigger now that he was standing next to it. The humming sound had gotten a little louder. I guess so, he said. What do I need to do? Dr. Veleth handed him a small device that looked like a bracelet. Wear this on your wrist. It will monitor your vital signs and ensure the machine does not push you beyond what your body can handle. Marcus put on the bracelet. It felt cold against his skin. The machine will guide you through the trial, Commander Zixneen said. Listen to its instructions. Do not try to be clever or find shortcuts. The Apex Resonator has seen every trick and strategy in the galaxy. Marcus walked toward the machine. As he got closer, the symbols on its surface began to glow brighter. The humming sound changed, becoming more musical. One more thing, Dr. Veleth called out. The machine will stop the trial if it detects that. You are in serious danger. Do not be ashamed if this happens. Most beings cannot complete even half of the full trial. Marcus nodded and kept walking. When he was about 10 feet away from the machine, something unexpected happened. The humming stopped completely. The symbols on the machine's surface flickered and went dark for a moment. And they came back on, but they were different colors now. Instead of blue and green, they were showing red and gold. Dr. Veleth made a confused noise. That is unusual, she said. The machine made a sound Marcus had never heard before. It was like a musical note, but deeper and more complex. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Has it ever done that before? Marcus asked. Dr. Veleth and Commander Zixneen looked at each other. Both of them seemed worried. No, Dr. Veleth said slowly. In 3,000 years of operation, the Apex Resonator has never made that sound. The machine began to hum again, but the tune was different now. It sounded almost like it was asking a question. Marcus took another step forward. The machine's response was immediate. Every symbol on its surface lit up at once, creating a light so bright that several aliens and the audience had to cover their eyes. Perhaps we should postpone the trial, Commander Zixneen said. The machine may be malfunctioning. But Marcus was already too close to back away now. The machine had noticed him, and whatever it was doing, it seemed to be reacting specifically. To him, he had never been one to walk away from a challenge, especially not with dozens of beings watching him. Let's see what happens, he said, and took the final step toward the Apex Resonator. The moment Marcus stepped close enough to touch the machine, everything changed. The floor beneath his feet began to glow with the same red and gold symbols that covered the Apex Resonator. The air around him shimmered like heat waves rising from hot concrete. A voice spoke inside his head. It did not use words from any language he knew, but somehow Marcus understood it perfectly. Begin trial. Physical assessment starting. The room around Marcus disappeared. 1 second he was standing in the testing bay with dozens of aliens watching him. The next second he was in a place that looked like a construction site, but wrong. The buildings were too tall and made of materials he did not recognize. The sky was purple instead of blue. A massive piece of machinery sat in front of him. It looked like a crane, but bigger than any he had ever seen. The arm was as long as a city block and made of black metal. A voice in his head told him to lift it. Marcus walked around the machine, looking at it from different angles. Back on Earth, his boss always said the most important part of operating heavy equipment was understanding how it worked.
How?
You could not just grab something and pull, you had to find the right leverage points. The machine had joints and connection, points just like the cranes he worked with every day. Marcus could see where the weight was distributed and where the weak spots were. Instead of trying to lift the entire crane, he found the hydraulic release valve and opened it. The crane's arm folded down into a compact position. Then he was able to lift it easily. The voice in his head sounded surprised. Unexpected solution. Physical trial completed faster than any previous subject. Mental assessment starting. The construction site vanished. Marcus was now standing in what looked like a maze made of mirrors. Every surface reflected his image. Back at him thousands of times, the voice told him to find the exit. Most beings, it said, took between 2 and 6 hours to solve this puzzle. Marcus had worked in buildings with confusing layouts before. Office towers, shopping malls, warehouses that seemed to go on forever. The trick was not to get lost in the details. He ignored the mirrors and focused on the airflow. Every building had to have ventilation. He followed the slight breeze until he found a gap between 2 mirrors that led to the next section. The maze tried to confuse him with illusions and false paths. But Marcus treated it like a building inspection. He looked for structural clues instead of visual ones. He followed electrical conduits hidden behind the mirrors. He listened for the sound of air moving through vents. He felt for changes in the temperature that showed where the real passages were. In 18 minutes, he was standing at the exit. The voice in his head was quiet for a long moment. Mental trial completed. Time: 18 minutes, 14 seconds. Previous record: 1 hour, 42 minutes. Spiritual assessment starting. The maze disappeared.
Oh.
Marcus found himself in a place that made his chest feel tight with fear. He was standing on a narrow beam high above a city. The beam was only as wide as his foot. Wind howled around him. Far below, he could see lights and movement. But everything looked impossibly small. The voice told him to walk across the beam. It was a test of courage, it said. He had to overcome his fear and trust in his own abilities. Marcus looked at the beam. It was made of metal and looked solid enough. But it was at least 1,000 feet above the ground. One slip would mean certain death. Then he remembered something from his construction training. When you worked on high beams, you did not look down. You did not think about falling. You focused on the work in front of you, made each step deliberate and careful. Marcus started walking, one foot in front of the other. He kept his eyes on the beam, not on the drop below. When the wind tried to push him sideways, he bent his knees and lowered his center of gravity. He had walked on narrow beams before, just not this high up. Halfway across, the beam started to shake. The voice in his head told him this was part of the test. Most beings froze when the shaking started. Some fell, others turned back. Marcus kept walking. The shaking reminded him of operating equipment on windy days. You learn to work with the movement instead of fighting it. He adjusted his balance with each step and kept moving forward. When he reached the other side, the voice in his head was silent for almost a minute. Spiritual trial completed. Beginning advanced assessment protocols. The high beam vanished. Marcus was now in a place that hurt to look at. The walls were covered in patterns that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. Strange creatures that were not quite animals and not quite machines crawled across the floor. The voice told him to fight. A warrior approached him. It was twice his size and covered in armor that looked like it was made of living shadow. It carried a weapon that crackled with energy. Marcus had never been in a real fight in his life. But he had learned something important from years of working construction. When you faced a problem that seemed impossible, you did not try to meet it head-on. You found a different approach. The warrior swung its energy weapon at Marcus. Of trying to block or dodge, Marcus rolled between its legs. The warrior was big and strong, but it was also slow and clumsy. Marcus stayed close to it, where its long reach was a disadvantage. He looked for weak points in the armor. Every piece of equipment had them. Even the strongest steel had joints and connection points that were vulnerable. Marcus found a gap near the warrior's knee and kicked it as hard as he could. The warrior stumbled. Marcus grabbed a piece of broken metal from the floor and jammed it into another gap in the armor. The warrior's movements became jerky and uncoordinated. Within minutes, the warrior was down. Marcus had not overpowered it. He had outsmarted it. The voice in his head sounded different now. Less confident? More confused. Advanced trial completed. Initiating maximum difficulty protocols. Warning. No being has ever completed this level. But Marcus was just getting started. Which challenge the machine threw at him, he treated like a problem to solve. and Marcus was very good at solving problems. The machine's voice in Marcus's head sounded strained now, like it was struggling to find the right words. Maximum difficulty engaged. Subject will face trials designed to break the strongest minds in the galaxy. The world around Marcus shifted. Again, this time he found himself in a place that seemed familiar at first. It looked like his old high school gym, but something was wrong. The walls were melting slowly, like ice cream left in the sun. The ceiling was too high and seemed to go up forever. Voices echoed from empty hallways, calling his name in tones that made his skin crawl. "This is a fear trial," the voice explained. "You will experience your deepest terrors made real. Most beings surrender within minutes." Marcus looked around the twisted version of his school. He could hear the voices of people he knew, his mother crying, his friends laughing at him, his old boss telling him he was worthless. Sounds got louder and more painful. But Marcus had learned something important during his 2 years in construction. Sometimes the job was terrible. Sometimes people yelled at you or treated you badly. Sometimes you wanted to quit and go home, but you kept working anyway. It's not because you were brave, but because the work needed to be done. He started walking. Through the nightmare school, the voices got louder. Faces appeared in the melting walls, all of them disappointed in him. The floor tried to grab his feet like thick mud. "You're not good enough," the voices said. "You'll never amount to anything." "Why are you even trying?" Marcus kept walking. He had heard worse things from real people, at least these voices were. Not real. The school changed around him. Now he was in a burning building. The heat was so intense, it felt like his skin was on fire. Smoke filled his lungs. Somewhere in the building, he could hear people screaming for help. The voice in his head told him to save them. But every time he tried to reach the screaming people, the building shifted. Hallways led to dead ends. Stairs collapsed under his feet. The fire got hotter, and the smoke got thicker. This was designed to break his spirit, Marcus realized. The machine wanted him to feel helpless. It wanted him to give up when he could not save everyone. But Marcus had learned another thing. From construction work, sometimes you could not fix everything. Sometimes the building was too damaged or the deadline was too short. You did what you could and moved on to the next job. He stopped trying to save the screaming voices. Instead, he looked for a way out. Of the building, the machine did not like this. Fire got hotter, the screaming got louder, new voices joined in, begging him not to abandon them. Marcus found a window and broke through it. The burning building disappeared. Emotional resistance. Trial failed to achieve desired effect, the voice said. It sounded frustrated now, initiating physical endurance beyond safe parameters. Marcus was now standing at the bottom of a mountain that stretched up so high he could not see the top. The air was thin and cold. Every breath hurt his lungs. The voice told him to climb to the summit. It said the mountain had broken the bodies of warriors from 100 different worlds. Marcus started climbing. The mountain was steep and covered with loose rocks that tried to slide out from under his feet. The air got thinner with every step. His muscles began to ache. After an hour of climbing, Marcus was exhausted. His legs felt like rubber. His lungs burned. But he kept going. When his body wanted to quit, he used his mind to push through. When his mind got tired, he used anger to keep moving. When the anger faded, he used stubbornness. The mountain tried everything to stop him. Avalanches of rocks tumbled down from above. Ice storms froze his hands and feet. The path disappeared, forcing him to climb straight up cliff faces. Marcus had never climbed a real mountain before, but he had spent long days doing hard physical work in all kinds of weather. He knew how to pace himself. He knew when to rest and when to push harder. Most importantly, he knew that every job had an end, no matter how impossible it seemed. Hours passed. Marcus's hands were bleeding from grabbing sharp rocks. His clothes were torn. Ice had formed in his hair, but he kept climbing. The voice in his head started to sound worried. Subject is exceeding safe physical limits. Recommend immediate termination of trial. But Marcus could not hear the voice anymore. He was too focused on the next handhold, the next step up the mountain. His world had shrunk down to just moving forward, no matter what. Somewhere far below him, in the real world, alarms started going off in the testing bay. Dr. Veleth stared at the displays in shock. The numbers were climbing higher than she had ever seen. Commander Zixnine paced back and forth, unsure whether to stop the trial or let it continue. "The machine is overheating," one of the technicians reported. "Power consumption is at 150% of normal levels." On the mountain, Marcus finally reached the top. He stood on the summit, gasping for air, and looked down at how far he had climbed. The view should have been beautiful, but all he could think about was what came next. The voice in his head was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, it sounded different, less confident, almost scared. "Physical endurance trial completed. Subject has exceeded all previous records. Warning: machine operating beyond design specifications. Initiating final protocol." The mountain disappeared. Marcus found himself back in the testing bay, but everything was wrong. Sparks were flying from the apex resonator. The symbols on its surface were flashing rapidly between different colors. The humming sound had become a high-pitched whine that made the aliens in the audience cover their ears. "The machine is having some kind of breakdown," Dr. Veleth shouted over the noise, but Marcus was not done yet. The machine had one more trial for him, and he could feel it building up inside the ancient device. Something bigger and more challenging than anything that had come before. He wondered if the machine was finally going to show him something he could not handle. The other part of him was curious to find out what would happen if he refused to give up. The apex resonator was screaming now. The high-pitched whine had become so loud that cracks appeared in the walls of the testing bay. Several aliens ran for the exits, covering their ears with their hands, or whatever they used for hands. Dr. Veleth shouted commands at her technicians, but her voice was lost in the noise. Warning lights flashed red all around the room. The display screen that showed scores was flickering between numbers so high that some of them had never been seen before. Marcus stood in front of the machine, waiting for whatever came next. He was tired, hurt, and covered in sweat and blood from the trials, but he was not ready to quit. Something stubborn in his human nature would not let him back down now. The machine's voice spoke to him one last time. It sounded different now, desperate, almost pleading. Final trial beginning. Warning: this protocol was never meant to be used. May cause permanent damage to subject and testing equipment. Recommend immediate withdrawal from trial. Marcus wiped blood from his nose with the back of his hand. "Let's finish this," he said. The world around him changed one last time. But this was not like the other trials. Marcus found himself standing in a place that seemed to exist outside of normal reality. The ground beneath his feet looked like black glass. The sky above was filled with stars. But they were moving in patterns that hurt to watch. In front of him stood a figure that looked exactly like himself. But this other Marcus was perfect. He was taller, stronger, smarter. His clothes were clean and expensive. His face showed confidence that the real Marcus had never felt. "This is who you could have been," the perfect Marcus said. "If you had made better choices. If you had worked harder. If you had been born with more talent." The voice of the machine echoed all around them. "This is the trial of ultimate despair. So you must face the perfect version of yourself. You must accept that you will never be good enough. Most beings break when they realize how much better they could have been." The perfect Marcus smiled with cruel satisfaction. "Look at yourself. Construction worker who stumbled into something. He doesn't understand. You think you're special because you got lucky with a few tests? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." Marcus looked at his perfect double. He had to admit the other version of himself was impressive, confident, successful. Everything that Marcus sometimes wished he could be. But then, Marcus thought about something his father had told him years ago. His dad had worked construction, too, before he got sick. He used to say that the difference between a good worker and a bad one was not talent or luck. It was showing up every day, even when you did not want to. "You're right," Marcus said to his perfect double. "I'm not special. I'm not the smartest or the strongest or the most talented person in the galaxy, but I'm here. I showed up, and I'm not leaving." The perfect Marcus looked confused. "You don't understand. I am everything you could have been. How can you stand there and accept being less than perfect?" Marcus shrugged, because perfect doesn't exist. There's always someone smarter, stronger, better. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you do the best you can with what you have. The perfect Marcus began to fade around the edges. That makes no sense. Why would you accept being inferior? I'm not accepting being inferior, Marcus said. I'm accepting being human. With those words, the perfect Marcus disappeared completely. The strange reality around them began to crack like broken glass. The machine's voice was barely a whisper now. System error. Unable to process subject response. Trial parameters exceeded. Cannot compute. More cracks appeared in the black glass. Ground. The moving stars in the sky began to flicker and go out one by one. Machine is entering protective shutdown, the voice said. Subject has achieved something that should not be possible. Registering score as ... error. Cannot calculate. System limit exceeded. The strange reality shattered completely. Marcus found himself back in the testing bay. But now the apex resonator was surrounded by clouds of smoke and steam. Sparks shot out from cables that had melted from overheating. The display screen showed only 2 words: system overload. Dr. Veleth ran toward the machine with a fire extinguisher. Emergency shutdown, everyone out of the testing bay. But Marcus just stood there, swaying slightly on his feet. He looked at the smoking, sparking machine that had tested warriors for 3,000 years. Did I pass? He asked. Commander Zixanine approached him carefully. The silver-skinned alien looked at Marcus like he was seeing something that should not exist. The machine has never shut down before, the commander said slowly. In 3 millennia of operation, no being has ever forced it into protective mode. Da-da-da! Veleth came back from checking the machine's status. Her pale blue face was white with shock. The core systems are intact, but barely. The machine had to protect itself from permanent damage. It couldn't process what was happening. So what does that mean? Marcus asked. The commander was quiet. For a long moment, then it made a sound that might have been laughter, if silver-skinned aliens could laugh. It means you didn't just pass the trial, human Marcus Chen. You broke it. You are the first being in galactic history to score system limit exceeded. Word of what had happened spread quickly through Luna Base. Within hours, representatives from the Galactic Coalition were calling emergency meetings. Scientists wanted to study Marcus, to understand how human biology worked. Military leaders wanted to know if all humans were like him. Marcus just wanted to go home and sleep for about a week, but first, he had to fill out more paperwork. This time, there were no computer errors. The Coalition wanted humanity to join as partners, not just as recruits. 3 days later, Marcus was on a transport ship heading back to Earth. But now he carried with him a formal invitation for the human race to join the galactic community. He also carried a warning for the Coalition's testing division. They needed to build stronger machines. As Earth grew larger in the ship's windows, Marcus smiled. He had left home as a construction worker who stumbled into the wrong application. He was returning as the being who broke a 3,000-year-old testing machine by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. The other passengers on the ship, mostly alien diplomats and scientists, watched him with a mixture of respect and nervousness. They were beginning to understand something important about humans. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy, were not the smartest. But they were the only species that did not know when to quit, and sometimes that was enough to change everything.